In this video, we'll be diagramming the following sentence from Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, using the 4-level sentence diagramming and analysis method here, the parts of speech, parts of sentence, phrases, and finally clauses. We're going to be walking through what each of these parts mean as we diagram the sentence and analyze it using the official terms and notation here. So here's our sentence. In your heart, you thoroughly despised the persons who so assiduously courted you. So our first level here, this first blank space above the first line, is our parts of sentence, or parts of speech. And we're going to be using color coding here to identify the 4 parts. So we're going to use black here for the parts of speech. And for each word, basically what we're going to do is we're going to write one of the parts of speech, like noun, adjective, verb, preposition, pronoun, any of those. And we're going to go through word by word. Starting here with our first word is in. And in is going to be, that's describing the location of some object or some metaphorical object in this context here. So it's inside your heart. It's the location being referred to. And whenever we refer to a location, that usually means it's going to be a preposition. So we know in must be a preposition. Then your here, this is going to be an adjective that's modifying heart. So whose heart was it? It was your heart. So we know immediately from that context, your is going to be an adjective, and of course heart is the noun that your is modifying. Next we have you, which is a very simple and very ordinary pronoun here, second person pronoun. Thoroughly, now here we know, looking at the ly, that's one way you can tell immediately that thoroughly is an adverb. But another way, you can look at the rest of the sentence and the coming words, despise the persons. So we're looking for a verb that thoroughly is modifying. So despise, right here we see, is obviously a verb. It's the action of despising. You despise, that's a verb. So we see immediately, how did you despise them? You thoroughly despised them. So thoroughly, the adverb, is adding additional detail to the verb despised. It's modifying it, just like we had your heart back here. And next we have the, which is going to be an adjective, because similarly to your heart, we have the persons. The is describing what kind of persons. We have the persons in particular. And of course, persons is the noun. Who here, this is a little bit different and a bit trickier than the in we had at the beginning of the sentence. Who is also a preposition as it happens because it's describing a person or a location. Which person is it? It's the person's who, so it's still going to be a preposition as we had at the beginning. Then so, or pronoun I should say. Similarly for so, we have another adverb. And it turns out we have assiduously, because of the ly, is also going to be an adverb. And all of these adverbs are modifying the single verb courted here. So we've got assiduously modifying courted, and we have so modifying it as well. So we have so assiduously building on the layers of modification here to courted. And finally, we have you acting as a pronoun once again. So there we have our level 1 parts of speech completed. And now we're going to use that information to help figure out and fill out level 2, which is the parts of sentence. So this is going to include our subject and our predicate, which is basically what the sentence is trying to say. We have the subject, or the main center of attention in the sentence, and then the predicate, which is the action that the subject is taking or what it's linked to. We can also have several direct objects or indirect objects, depending on the type of predicate, which describe the object or the recipient of the action being taken by the subject. So here, usually we have a subject is going to be a noun or a pronoun. So we look for all nouns and pronouns in this sentence. Our first noun is heart here. So to figure out if this is really the subject or not, we can look at the rest of the sentence for some context. So if, let's say heart was the subject, we'd have heart, and then where would the predicate be? Well, we have verb here. This could be a predicate. We could have heart despised. But the heart isn't doing the despising. It's you that's really doing the despising. The heart isn't despising anyone. So what we really have here, we're just going to go ahead and erase this. We really have the subject being you here, the pronoun. And we figured that out by testing a couple of other options. This heart here in particular did not make any sense in the context of the sentence. So we have you being the subject, and now we look for a predicate. So pretty much our only other verb or applicable verb in this sentence is despised, because obviously it's not going to make sense to say you courted as the subject and predicate, because you aren't courting anybody, you're despising the persons. So it makes sense that our despised here, the verb, is our predicate. And in particular, this is an action verb predicate, an AVP, because you, the subject, you are taking the action of despising. It's not a linking, it's actually taking an action here to despise. So we have an AVP there. Now, we're going to go ahead and search for a direct object, or DO. Now, the direct object, as I mentioned earlier, is usually the recipient or the object of the action being taken by the subject. So an indirect object is usually going to be a noun or a pronoun in some cases. So our next noun is persons here. So we're going to check this and see if it makes any sense. So we would have you despised persons, subject, predicate, DO. This seems to make sense. The despising was done on the persons. You despised the persons. So it makes sense that persons would be the direct object. Okay, so now it's possible to have a second set of subject and predicates if we do have a second clause as well. So we always check to see if it's possible to have this second set. So we look here, we have a pronoun right here, it's who, and a subject could be a pronoun as well. So let's see, if we set the subject to be who, we then have our next verb is courted. So we have who courted. This seems to make sense as a subject-predicate pair, so we're going to write in who as the second subject. It's a second person or a second group of people who are taking an action, totally separate from the original you. So we have who courted. This is another action verb predicate. And finally, we do seem to have a second DO as well. We have you here. Who courted you? The you, in general, is the recipient of the action of the courting. So we have you set as the DO. Okay, so there's our level 2 completed. Now we're moving on to level 3, our phrases here. And essentially what a phrase is, it's a group of words that serve some purpose or distinct function within the sentence. So we could have, the most common type is a prepositional phrase, which is usually composed of a preposition, an adjective, and a noun. Sometimes more than one adjective, but usually just one. That's describing a location or a place of something. So right away here, we have the preposition, adjective, noun trio here, in your heart. And this is very clearly a prepositional phrase. So we're going to go ahead and mark this in as a prep phrase. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and look at the rest of the sentence here, of course, and we're going to see if there are any other similar phrases, any more prepositional phrases. There's not a single other preposition in this sentence, so there does not appear to be any more of those. We don't see any pairs of nouns or verbs. We don't see the word to, which is a common indicator of an infinitive phrase, because you have like to go or to build would be an infinitive form. But we don't have that at all in this sentence, so that appears to be it for phrases. So there are no other phrases in this sentence. And now moving on to the final level of analysis here, level 4, the clauses. And a clause is essentially just a complete, it's a distinct idea within a sentence. So it's more than a phrase, it's expressing an action or something that's happening that's integral to the sentence itself. So, since we have two subject-predicate pairs here, that tells us immediately, right off the bat, that we have two clauses. So now the trick is to just find what type of clause, independent or dependent, each clause is. So, we have here the line, or the barrier between the DO and the subject. This is also the barrier between the first set of subject and predicate and the second set. We've got, it ends here at persons and begins at who. So let's see, our first part here would just be, in your heart, you thoroughly despised the persons. And that reads like a complete sentence. You could put a period right here. It may not be a very meaningful sentence, but it is a complete one. You thoroughly despised the persons. So we can say right here that we have one independent clause here. That's our first clause. And this clause, it starts from the very beginning of the sentence, and it goes right up until persons, the end of persons there. It breaks off. Okay, that's our first clause. And next we have the whole rest of the sentence here, the remaining 5 words. Who so assiduously courted you? Now that definitely does not make sense on its own. We can't just say, who so assiduously courted you? We cannot say that. It makes no sense. So that means this must be a dependent clause. So the remainder of our sentence, right here, must be a dependent clause because it does not have a complete idea. Now it does have a complete set of subject, predicate, and DO, but the idea it expresses is not complete on its own. Okay, so now that we have these two clauses here, we can identify this sentence using, for example, an ICCI or DI, any one of those types. So we have here an I, of course, and we have a D, and we have no comma in between. I just added this period to show clarification here. There's no period in the original sentence, obviously. So we know, thus, that this sentence must be an ID complex sentence. And we call it complex because we have different types of clauses. We have an independent and a dependent. If this were an independent and an independent, we would have a compound sentence. So complex when the clause types are different, and compound when they're the same. Okay, this is a declarative sentence. It's simply stating a fact. Okay, so this here is an ID complex declarative sentence. And with that, we have completed the analysis of this sentence. And as a little bit of an extra here, assiduously here, this vocabulary word means to do something in an aggressive or highly determined manner. So the people being described here aggressively and in a determined way, they courted the person, the you being described here. And there we have it. We have successfully completed the analysis of this sentence from Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice.